6 years ago, my brother slept with my GF when I was planning to propose. Now, at our father's funeral, he walked in holding her hand and said, "Some guys just finish first. Too bad the old man never figured that out." I stayed silent, then watched him spiral at the will hearing. Sup, Reddit. 6 years ago, my brother stole the love of my life. They betrayed me, then got married. My dad cut him off ever since. Now at his funeral, my brother showed up with my ex and tried to humiliate me. His smirk faded at the will hearing. He never saw that coming. Here's what went down. I, 26 male, had it all figured out. I'm a structural engineer for a decent firm in Portland. 40,000 saved for a house, and most importantly, I was about to propose to Allison. We'd been together for 2 years. She'd stay over 3 nights a week, had her own drawer in my dresser, and knew how I liked my coffee. I had the ring and was planning the whole thing. Then my brother Brandon decided he wanted what I had. Brandon's the golden boy. 2 years older, real estate hotshot pulling $120,000, selling overpriced condos to tech bros. Porsche Cayenne, downtown penthouse, designer everything. Shows up to family dinner talking about disrupting markets, while mom hangs on every word like he's delivering the gospel of success. Mom always made it clear which son mattered. Brandon got the praise, the bragging rights, the pride. I got lectures about applying myself and living up to my potential. Even when I landed decent engineering work, it was always, "That's nice, honey," but Brandon just closed another $1 million listing. One Thursday, Allison asked to meet at our coffee shop. Had that look like she was solving a math problem? She told me she needed someone who could actually provide, someone with real ambition, someone who understood what success looked like. This is about Brandon, isn't it? Yes. Turns out Golden Boy had been working on her for weeks. Expensive dinners, luxury listings, showing off bank statements. He'd taken her to see some seven-figure penthouse, promised her that lifestyle. She told me with a straight face that she'd already screwed him. Last weekend, while I was at a conference. "He's going to propose," she said, cold as ice. "Already looking at rings. Real ones." Then came the kicker. "Brandon said you'd probably just sit there and take it. Said you never fight for anything." That's right. I stood up. "Good luck, Allison." Then I walked out. First call I made was to Billy. Best friend since we were 8, Puerto Rican kid with a smart mouth who became the brother I actually wanted. While Brandon played Golden Boy, Billy and I built tree forts and got into trouble. After high school, he'd worked his way up at Dad's construction supply company. Warehouse to inventory to operations. Dad called him his right-hand man. Trusted Billy more than his own sons. I told him everything. He wasn't surprised about Allison, but Brandon going full supervillain? That pissed him off. 3 days later, Brandon brought Allison to Sunday dinner, announcing their engagement. Dad walked out mid-meal. When Brandon called me that night with his fake concerned voice, I hung up. Blocked them both. Dad didn't take it well. First time I'd seen him truly angry at his Golden Boy. Called Brandon a disgraceful piece of shit. Cut off his access to family money. Froze him out completely. Mom, of course, blamed me. Called crying about how I was tearing the family apart and letting jealousy make me vindictive. According to her, I should be mature enough to accept that Allison had chosen what was best for her future. "You're embarrassing us all with this grudge, Jensen. People are starting to talk." That's what she cared about. What people would say at the country club. 2 months later, engagement photos on Facebook. They had their big Napa wedding the next spring. That was 6 years ago. 6 years of pretending I didn't care while Brandon treated me like the family charity case. And Mom acted like I was the problem child for not getting over it. 6 years of family dinners where she'd introduce Brandon as my successful son in real estate and me as just my other son. 6 years of Billy being the only one who reminded me I wasn't crazy. Fast forward to 3 weeks ago. Dad's funeral. Lung cancer finally got him after 2 years of fighting. Not going to lie, I cried. Despite everything, despite feeling like the family scapegoat for half my life, I loved the old man. I drove up from Seattle. See, after the Allison situation imploded, I had two choices. Stay in Portland feeling sorry for myself or use the rage as fuel. I chose door number 2. 6 months after she left, I was headhunted by a Seattle firm working on high-rise projects. Not just any buildings, luxury towers, mixed-use developments, the kind of structures that change city skylines. The pay bump was massive, from $65,000 to $95,000 overnight. 2 years in, I started consulting on weekends. Nothing big at first, just reviewing structural plans for smaller firms, catching mistakes that could cost millions. Word spread fast. Seattle's construction boom was exploding, and everyone needed qualified engineers who could move fast without cutting corners. The consulting work led to a partnership opportunity with Cascade Engineering Solutions. They needed someone who understood both structural design and project management. By year 4, we were pulling in over $300,000 annually in contracts. That's when I met Anna. Anna rode shotgun to the funeral, looking like she'd stepped out of a magazine in her black Armani dress. My wife of 3 years, blonde, brilliant, and from one of those Seattle families where old money actually means something. Met her at a charity auction for Seattle Children's Hospital. She outbid some Amazon exec on a sculpture just to watch him sulk, then bought me a drink and said, "You look like you have stories." Her father was Richard Blackwood. Blackwood Construction and Development. Old Seattle money that had been building the city since the 1940s. Real estate empire worth hundreds of millions. Dating Anna opened doors I didn't even know existed. Her father's company became one of our biggest clients. We got married 2 years later at the Olympic Club. Understated ceremony, but the guest list read like a who's who of Pacific Northwest business leaders. Brandon wasn't invited. Neither was Mom. So when I pulled up to Dad's funeral, I wasn't the broke engineer Brandon remembered. I was driving a Tesla, wearing a custom suit, and my wife had more connections than his entire real estate network. I got to the church early, grabbed a seat in the back. Billy was already there, 3 rows up, wearing a suit. Caught his eye and got a nod that said everything. We're getting through this together. And screw anyone who tries to make it about drama. Billy had been running Dad's day-to-day operations for the past 3 years. What started as warehouse management had evolved into complete operational control. Dad trusted him. Anna squeezed my hand. "Remember what we discussed. You're here to honor your father, not engage with family bullshit." Then Brandon made his entrance. 20 minutes late, because of course he was. Strutting down the center aisle like he was walking the red carpet, wearing a charcoal Tom Ford suit. Had his Rolex Submariner catching the light just right. Nothing says grieving son quite like making your dead father's funeral about your outfit. And holding his hand? Allison. She looked different. Still beautiful, obviously. But there was something brittle about her now. Like she was trying too hard to look happy. The dress was designer but felt wrong on her somehow. Too much like a real estate trophy wife costume. I'd heard through the grapevine that their marriage wasn't the fairy tale she'd expected. Brandon's income had been dropping steadily as the real estate market shifted. Word was they'd had to downsize from the penthouse to a regular condo. As they walked past my row heading to the family section, Brandon leaned in just close enough for me to hear. "Some guys just finish first. Too bad the old man never figured that out." Loud enough that Mrs. Henderson turned around. The asshole had just disrespected our dead father at his own funeral. I didn't flinch. Just smiled back and said, "You still flipping houses for a living?" His smirk faltered. Brandon's whole identity was wrapped up in being the successful brother. Calling it flipping houses reduced his empire to what it really was, sales. But the real punch came when Frank Carson walked over and shook my hand. "Jensen, sorry for your loss, son. Your father was proud as hell of what you built in Seattle. Always bragging about his boy who started his own firm, landed those big construction contracts." Brandon's head snapped around. I could see him processing what he'd just heard. "Structural engineering, right?" Frank continued. "Smart move. Joseph said you were pulling in over $400,000 last year doing design work for those high-rise projects." Anna stood to shake Frank's hand. "Frank Carson, I think you know my father, Richard Blackwood. He's mentioned your work on the Harbor District project." Frank's eyes lit up. "Blackwood's daughter? Hell, your dad and I go way back. How's he doing?" As Anna chatted with Frank about her father's construction investments, I watched Brandon's face cycle through confusion, calculation, and dawning realization that maybe I hadn't been sitting in Seattle feeling sorry for myself. After the service, Billy found me near the flowers. "Did you see Brandon's face when he heard 7 figures?" "Even better when he realized Anna's connected," I said. "You should have seen him trying to Google Blackwood Construction on his phone." Brandon tried to corner us both near the exit. Started going on about moving forward as a family and how someone's going to need to step up and take leadership of Dad's business. "Someone already has," Billy said calmly. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Means exactly what I said." Anna appeared at my elbow with 2 cups of coffee. "Gentlemen," she nodded at Brandon, "you must be the real estate brother. I've heard so much about you." The way she said it made it sound like a medical condition. The will reading was scheduled for the Monday after the funeral. Family only, plus the lawyer. Some guy who'd been handling Dad's affairs for the past decade. We met at Dad's house, the family estate that had been in the Langston family for 3 generations. Big colonial thing on 5 acres outside town. Brandon and Allison were already there when I arrived. sitting in the front parlor like they owned the place. Brandon had changed into what he probably thought was serious business attire. Navy blazer with gold buttons, slacks with a perfect crease. Even at a will reading, the bastard couldn't help but peacock. Billy was in the kitchen with Mom, who was doing that thing she does when she's nervous, cleaning things that are already clean while complaining about how inappropriate it was that Akola had scheduled this during her book club week. When he saw me, Billy gave me a look that said, "This is going to be interesting." "Jensen," Mom said when she saw me, forcing one of those tight smiles, "you could have at least worn a tie. This is a formal legal proceeding." Then she saw Anna, and her expression went through a fascinating series of micro-adjustments. Anna was wearing a simple black dress, her blonde hair in a perfect chignon, diamond earrings that caught the light just right. "And you must be," Mom began. "Anna Langston," Anna said, extending a manicured hand. "Jensen's wife, Mrs. Langston. I'm so sorry for your loss." Mom's smile froze. The lawyer arrived precisely at 2 p.m. Briefcase in one hand, manila folder in the other, expression that suggested he'd rather be auditing tax returns than dealing with family drama. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, settling behind Dad's old desk. "Thank you for being here today. Before we begin with the formal reading, I want to mention that Mr. Langston updated his will approximately 1 year ago." I caught Brandon's eyes narrow slightly at that. He'd probably been counting on some old version where he got the lion's share by default. Akola cleared his throat and began reading. The usual lawyer speak at first, then he got to the good stuff. "To my wife Margaret," the lawyer read, "I leave the sum of $250,000 in cash assets, plus the contents of our joint savings and checking accounts, and full ownership of the 2019 Mercedes E-Class sedan. To my son and Brandon," the lawyer continued, and Brandon leaned forward slightly, "I leave my collection of vintage golf clubs, my watch collection, and the sum of $50,000. Brandon's face went through this fascinating series of micro-expressions. 50 grand is nice, but it's not heir to the family fortune money. "To my son Jensen," the lawyer read, "I leave the family residence and all real estate holdings, valued at approximately $1.1 million, along with all contents therein." You could have heard a pin drop. Brandon's magazine hit the floor. "What?" Brandon said, his voice cracking slightly. "That has to be wrong." The lawyer didn't even look up. "The document is quite clear, Mr. Langston." Brandon stood up, knocking over his glass of water. The ice cubes scattered across Mom's Persian rug like his composure. "This is ridiculous. Dad promised me that house years ago. I was going to develop the back acreage, turn it into luxury homes. We had plans." "Please sit down, Mr. Langston," the lawyer interrupted. Brandon didn't sit. He was staring at me, face flushed red above his perfectly knotted tie. "What did you do, Jensen? What did you say to him? Did you poison him against me?" "Nothing," I said evenly. "Maybe he just saw things for what they were." The lawyer continued down the list. Stocks, accounts, trust funds. Some to me, some to charitable causes. Dad had supported quietly over the years. Small things to extended family. Then he dropped the nuclear bomb. "And now, as for the remaining family business assets," the lawyer said, "including Langston Construction Supply and its controlling 51% majority shares. These are left to Billy Lopez, who has been specifically named as Mr. Langston's chosen successor for business operations." The room went still. Even I was caught off guard, though I shouldn't have been. Billy had been Dad's right hand for years, but seeing it official was something else. Brandon's eyes went wide. "What? Billy? Are you freaking kidding me? He's not even family." "Actually," Billy said quietly, "he is. Just not blood family." "Oh, but I'm his son." Brandon was standing now, his voice getting higher. "I have a right to that business." The lawyer looked up. Mr. Langston explicitly stated that he had lost confidence in both of his sons' ability to manage the business responsibly. He chose Mr. Lopez based on his demonstrated loyalty, business acumen, and understanding of the company's operations and values. "Both sons?" Brandon spun around to look at me. "What did you do?" "Nothing. I moved to Seattle, remember? I haven't been involved in the business for years." "But Billy works for me." Brandon was completely losing it now. "I mean, he works for the family business. I'm the heir. I have rights." "Mr. Brandon Langston retains no shares or authority in Langston Construction Supply," the lawyer continued calmly. "Mr. Lopez has full voting control and operational authority." That was when Brandon completely lost his shit. He shot up from his chair so fast it toppled backward, his face going purple with rage. "This is fucking bullshit!" he screamed. "That vindictive old bastard! He did this to get back at me!" "Brandon!" Mom gasped. No, screw this. Brandon was pacing now. 6 years. 6 fucking years he punished me over some girl, over Jensen's hurt feelings. And now he gives everything to the hired help. Billy stood up slowly. Watch your mouth. Or what? Brandon spun around, his face twisted with fury. You'll fire me? Oh, wait, you can't. I don't work for you. I never worked for you. You're just some punk from the neighborhood who got lucky. Brandon, I said quietly, but Billy held up a hand. Let him talk, Billy said, his voice calm, but his eyes dangerous. I want to hear what he really thinks. You want to know what I think? Brandon was completely unhinged now. I think you've been kissing the old man's ass for years, waiting for your chance to cash in. I think you manipulated him into believing you were more trustworthy than his own sons. I think you're a fucking parasite who... Billy moved fast for a guy in a cheap suit. 1 second he was standing by the mantel, the next he was in Brandon's face. Your father, Billy said quietly, was the best man I ever knew. He taught me everything about running a business, about treating people with respect, about what loyalty actually means. And you just called him a vindictive old bastard at his own will reading. Brandon took a step back, suddenly aware that Billy was bigger than him and had been working with his hands for 15 years. He was a bitter old man who couldn't let go of a grudge, Brandon continued, but with less conviction. All those years talking about family values and loyalty, and he leaves everything to strangers. The room was dead silent, except for Brandon's heavy breathing. Are you done? Billy asked quietly. Brandon stared at him, chest heaving, his perfect hair finally mussed. Then he seemed to realize what he'd just said, how completely he'd revealed himself. But instead of apologizing, he doubled down. You know what? I'm glad he's dead. At least now I don't have to pretend to respect the miserable old shit. That was the final straw. Even Mom gasped and covered her mouth. Billy's face went cold. Get out! What? Get out of this house. Now. You can't throw me out of my own family home? It's not your family home, I said quietly. It's mine. And I'm telling you the same thing. Get out. Anna stood up. Actually, Brandon, I think what Jensen means is security will escort you out if you're not gone in 60 seconds. Brandon looked around the room wildly, like he was expecting someone to back him up. Mom was crying. The lawyer was staring in horror. Allison was watching like she was studying a particularly interesting insect. This isn't over, Brandon said, his voice shaking with rage. This whole thing is bullshit and everyone knows it. You think I'm just going to walk away from what my father built? Yeah, Billy said. That's exactly what you're going to do. Anna checked her watch. 30 seconds. Brandon and Allison left in a storm of slamming doors and squealing tires. After they were gone, Billy sat down heavily in Dad's old chair. Jesus, he said. I knew he was an asshole, but that was next level. You okay? I asked. Billy looked around the room, at the family photos, the furniture Dad had picked out, the life he'd built. Your dad saved my life, man. When my mom died, when my stepdad was drinking himself to death, Joseph Langston gave me a job, gave me purpose, treated me like family. And that piece of shit just called him a bitter old man. Dad knew what he was doing, I said. He picked the right person. So what happens now? Mom asked, still dabbing at her eyes. Billy and I looked at each other. Then Billy smiled. The same grin I'd known since we were kids. Now we run a construction supply company. And if Brandon wants to try to take it from us, well, he shrugged. Should be interesting. Anna leaned back in her chair. Oh, this is going to be fun. 2 weeks later, Brandon made his move. 2 weeks after the will reading, Billy and I were trying to figure out how to run a construction supply company from 300 miles away. Billy had driven down for the weekend to go over the books. We were sitting in my kitchen Thursday evening when Billy dropped the bomb. Brandon contacted me. Anna looked up from her laptop where she'd been researching construction supply market trends. Already? Dude doesn't waste time. It started about a week after the will reading, Billy explained. Checking in texts, then escalating to offers of help with family dynamics and client relationships. Brandon claimed some of our bigger clients had personal relationships with him through real estate deals. Billy showed me the text thread. Brandon was positioning himself as indispensable, claiming exclusive access to key accounts like Carson Construction and Henderson Builders. When Billy didn't jump at his initial offer to help with the transition, Brandon sweetened the pot. 50 grand just to call him a consulting partner. When I didn't bite, he upped it to 100. Plus, percentage of new business. Brandon kept pushing the smart money finds a way to work together angle. Said family businesses that don't adapt usually fail during first-generation transitions. Billy had done his homework. Brandon's real estate business was tanking. Commission income down 60% from 2 years ago, from 120,000 to under 50,000 annually. He needed legitimacy more than money. If he could claim partnership in Langston Construction Supply, he could leverage that to win back clients. Nothing quite like desperation dressed up as a business opportunity. Then Billy showed me Brandon's latest text. Been thinking about our conversation. I know 100 grand seems like a lot, but think long-term value. I've got 3 major development deals that could bring 200,000 plus in business over the next 2 years. Plus, my real estate network could be a game changer for premium materials. Let's meet this week. Billy's accountant had pulled Brandon's old tax returns. Dude had been living beyond his means for years, propped up by the real estate business that was now collapsing. Brandon's credit cards were maxed out, his mortgage was underwater, and he'd borrowed against his car to pay last month's condo fees. He's desperate enough to throw serious money around to get back in, Billy said. So what do we do? Billy got that look smile, figuring out how to get out of trouble. We let him think he's being clever while we document everything. Then when he's committed fully to whatever scheme he's planning, we shut it down publicly and permanently. Anna closed her laptop. You need legal documentation. My father's firm handles corporate fraud cases. I can have someone brief you on what constitutes admissible evidence. 2 days later, Brandon called Billy directly, claiming he had time-sensitive opportunities and clients ready to walk without continuity and family leadership. Game on, Anna said when I told her. Dad's lawyer will walk Billy through the recording laws and evidence requirements. This is about to get interesting. Billy texted me before he answered Brandon's call. Showtime, recording everything. I was in my home office when my phone buzzed with Billy's live updates. Brandon's really pushing now. Wants to meet next Tuesday. Claims he's got time-sensitive opportunities that can't wait. Now he's saying he's already been talking to some of our clients informally. Just checking in on behalf of the family. Holy shit. He just offered me $150,000 plus a company car. Dude is desperate. An hour later, Billy called me. He's completely lost it, Billy said. I've never heard him sound so frantic. He's claiming he's got clients ready to walk if there isn't continuity in family leadership during the transition. What clients? Carson Construction, for one. Said Frank Carson specifically told him he was concerned about working with new management and would feel more comfortable if Brandon was involved. That's bullshit. Carson loves you. I know, but Brandon doesn't know that I know that. So I told him I was interested in hearing more about these client concerns and suggested we set up a meeting where he could explain the situation in detail. And he jumped at it. Wants to meet at his office on Tuesday. Said he could show me documentation of his client relationships and walk me through his vision for strategic partnership. Billy paused. Jensen, I think he's going to try to claim he already has authority to negotiate on behalf of the business. Or at least that clients think he does. Anna had been listening from the kitchen. It's a one-party consent state, right? Yep, I can record everything legally. And I've already talked to Dad's lawyer about what constitutes fraud versus legitimate business discussion. What's the line? Basically, if he claims to have authority he doesn't actually have, or if he tries to make commitments on behalf of the company without authorization, that's fraud. If he's just talking about potential opportunities and being clear about his actual role, that's legal. Think he's smart enough to stay on the legal side? Billy laughed. Have you met your brother? The dude's about to walk into a meeting where he tries to convince me to pay him 6 figures to protect business relationships he doesn't actually have. Smart isn't the word I'd use. Anna appeared with 3 cups of coffee. Dad's attorney briefed me on the potential charges. If Brandon's been representing himself as having authority he doesn't possess, we're looking at wire fraud, business identity theft, and racketeering. Federal crimes with serious jail time. Billy had also done some investigating on his own. Brandon's desperation wasn't just about money. His reputation in the real estate community was completely shot. 3 former clients had filed formal complaints with the state licensing board. His broker had already suspended him pending investigation. That's when I realized what Dad had been protecting the business from all these years. Tuesday couldn't come fast enough. Brandon's office was all flash, no substance. Glass walls, leather furniture that cost more than most cars, motivational posters screaming luxury and premium, the kind of setup designed to impress clients who didn't look too closely. Billy texted me from the lobby. Going up. Phone recording. This better be good. An hour later, Billy called from his car in the parking garage. Holy shit, Jensen. Your brother just committed about 15 different felonies. While I recorded every word. Brandon had set up a whole presentation, PowerPoint slides, financial projections, the works. Started with his speech about family legacy and strategic partnerships. Then he got into his existing client relationships and how contractors had expressed concerns about the transition. Then he shows me the contracts. What contracts? Forged agreements with Carson Construction, Coastal Development, and Henderson Builders, all dated last week, all showing Brandon as family business liaison for Langston Construction Supply, authorized to negotiate pricing. But it got worse. Brandon had been using fake contracts to negotiate deals with suppliers, telling Pacific Materials he was handling purchasing for Langston Construction Supply and pocketing bulk discount differences. The scheme was more elaborate than I'd expected. Brandon had created professional-looking letterhead, business cards, even a fake employee ID badge. He'd been walking into supplier meetings, presenting himself as the family representative, managing the transition period. Pacific Materials had given him a 15% bulk discount rate reserved for long-term partners. He had been ordering supplies at the discounted rate, then selling them to small contractors at full markup and keeping the difference. Over the past month, he'd pocketed nearly $8,000 this way. And the best part? He's incorporated Langston Premium Construction Supply. Using Dad's photo on the website, copying our marketing materials, telling clients it's the premium division of our company. He's using Dad's photo? Front and center, under a banner saying, "Continuing a legacy of excellence." The jerk is literally stealing Dad's image to build a competing business. Billy had recorded everything, including Brandon offering him $200,000 and a management title to endorse his new company and help transition our client base. He called it facilitating a strategic merger, but basically asked me to help him gut Langston Construction Supply and rebuild it under his control. Oh, and he wants to use your house as collateral for a business loan. Brandon had apparently talked to investors about his premium construction supply concept, and they wanted to see assets. He'd asked if I'd put the house up as security for a family business investment. The investors he'd mentioned weren't real investors. They were loan sharks who specialized in asset-backed loans for failing businesses. Brandon was so deep in debt that legitimate lenders wouldn't touch him. I told him I was impressed and needed time to review everything. Asked him to email me all the documentation. And he did that? Already sent everything. Forged contracts, supplier agreements, business plan, investor pitch deck, complete with financial projections, assuming we'd hand over our entire client base. Billy was back at the warehouse. He'd called Dad's lawyer and was setting up a meeting with the DA's office. 2 hours later, Billy called back. Carson Construction, Coastal Development, Henderson Builders. Brandon contacted all of them this past week, claiming to be a transitional business manager for Langston Construction Supply. He'd told them there might be service disruptions during ownership change, but he could guarantee continuity if they signed new agreements with Langston Premium Construction Supply, described as the upgraded division of our operation. Carson told him to back off. Henderson hung up. But Coastal Development was actually considering it because Brandon showed them forged contracts and convinced them he had legitimate authority. How many laws has he broken? I stopped counting at 12, but the prosecutor seemed very interested. This kind of systematic business fraud is exactly what they like to prosecute. Anna was researching federal fraud statutes when I got home. Your brother is looking at 5 to 10 years minimum. The identity theft alone is a felony, but business fraud with forged documents? The feds are going to love this case. The prosecutor Billy met with specialized in white-collar crime. She'd seen cases like this before, desperate business owners trying to leverage family connections into fraudulent opportunities. What made Brandon's case particularly egregious was the nature of the deception and his willingness to use his dead father's image and reputation. 3 days later, Brandon walked into his own trap. The final meeting was set for Friday afternoon. Billy had convinced Brandon he was ready to move forward with the partnership, but wanted to review final details and timeline. I drove up Thursday night and met Billy at the warehouse. We spent the morning with a cola and the prosecutor going over the plan. Let Brandon explain his full scheme on camera, get him to confirm the forged documents, then let the law handle the rest. He's already committed multiple felonies, the prosecutor explained. At this point, he could confess, and we'd still convict. But if he doubles down, he'll dig his own grave, Billy finished. Anna had flown up that morning with Richard Blackwood's corporate attorney, one of the best white-collar crime lawyers on the West Coast. Professional courtesy, she explained. Dad wanted to make sure this was handled correctly. At 2 p.m., Billy walked into Brandon's office wearing a wire and carrying documents that would end my brother's career permanently. I waited in Dad's lawyer's office with Anna and her father's attorney, listening to the live audio feed. Brandon's voice came through confident and excited, ready to make real money. Billy played along, saying he'd reviewed everything and was impressed. Brandon launched into his presentation about strategic partnerships, He'd been having informal conversations with clients to assess the situation during the transition. He showed Billy the forged contracts, all showing Brandon as authorized representative for Langston Construction Supply. I explained to them that I was handling the transitional period while you got up to speed, Brandon said on the recording. But you don't actually have authority to represent Langston Construction Supply. I have family authority. I'm Joseph Langston's son. Billy kept pushing. When he asked about the bulk purchasing agreements, Brandon had negotiated using our company name. Brandon called them preliminary arrangements for when they fully launched the premium operation, using forged authorization documents. Forged is a strong word. I prefer provisional. The attorney was taking notes, shaking his head. This idiot is confessing to everything on tape. Brandon explained his business model. He'd created Langston Premium Construction Supply to honor the family legacy while positioning properly in the luxury market. When Billy pointed out the legal implications, Brandon waved them off. This is a family business. You think Joseph Langston built his company worrying about every little legal technicality? Actually, yes. He was obsessive about doing things right. Look where doing things right got him. Dead at 68. That's when Billy's voice went quiet. Excuse me? Brandon doubled down, calling Billy great at operations, but clueless about business development. Said Jensen was good with engineering, but didn't understand the business side of construction. Without someone who understood both industries, the business would fail. So you're doing us a favor. I'm trying to save the family legacy and make us all rich. By stealing our clients and setting up a competing business? By evolving the business model. When Billy called it fraud, Brandon told him to get out. Called Billy Joseph Langston's charity case and an employee with a fancy title. I'll build this business myself, and when Langston Construction Supply goes under, I'll be there to pick up the pieces. The attorney looked up from his notes. That's a conspiracy to commit business fraud. Federal prosecutors love that charge. 20 minutes later, Billy texted me. It's happening. The cops walked into his office while he was on the phone with another potential victim. Billy watched through the glass wall as Brandon's face went from confusion to panic. Brandon Langston? The lead detective said, flashing his badge. What's this about? Wire fraud, business identity theft, conspiracy? You're under arrest. That's when he completely lost it. Started screaming about family businesses and misunderstandings while they cuffed him. This is bullshit! Billy, tell them! We had a deal! Billy just stood there, arms crossed. What deal? Brandon's voice cracked like a 13-year-old. You piece of shit! This is my family's business! Not anymore. As they dragged him out, Brandon was screaming loud enough for the whole building to hear. You will regret this! I will make you pay! This isn't over! Billy called after him. Good luck with that. Police found boxes of forged documents, stolen client lists, and a business plan outlining his strategy for acquiring our customer base through transitional negotiations. The cherry on top? Brandon's assistant quit on the spot and asked Billy if we were hiring. Anna was scrolling through her phone when the arrest news broke. Brandon's mugshot is already online. Allison must be having a great day. Brandon was charged with 12 felonies. His lawyer recommended immediate plea deal. 2 weeks later, Allison filed for divorce. Brandon pled guilty to 8 counts, got 18 months federal prison, 3 years probation, and permanent ban from construction or real estate in Oregon and Washington. His business was dissolved, assets seized for restitution, reputation destroyed. We kept every client Brandon tried to steal. Word travels fast. Everyone knew what he'd attempted and how we'd handled it. Companies sought us out because they were impressed by our integrity. Anna's father ended up investing in our expansion. Richard Blackwood had been watching the construction supply market for years, waiting for the right opportunity. A business with that kind of ethical leadership is worth backing, he told me over dinner. Langston Construction Supply had its best year ever under Billy's leadership. We expanded into 3 new markets, signed 12 major new accounts, and increased revenue by 67%, from $1.8 million to just over $3 million annually. Billy moved into Dad's old office and hung a photo of the old man right behind his desk. Anna's father's company became one of our biggest clients, creating a perfect synergy between design and supply that gave us a major competitive advantage. The company that Brandon thought he could gut and rebuild became more successful than it had ever been under Dad's management. The house Dad left me became my weekend retreat. I spent most Saturdays there, and Billy would come by for dinner and to talk business. Anna loved the old place, said it had good bones, and helped me restore it to its original grandeur. And Brandon? Last I heard, he was working at a lumber yard in Ohio, living in a trailer park and driving a 20-year-old pickup truck. His parole officer wouldn't let him leave the state. The divorce from Allison had been brutal. She'd taken what little he had left after the asset seizure, claiming emotional distress and financial fraud, from Porsche Cayenne to pickup truck rust bucket. That's what we call a career pivot. Some guys just finish last, and some guys get exactly what they deserve. Mom still calls regularly, but not to check on me, to guilt trip me about Brandon. When I point out that Brandon committed actual felonies, she sighs like I'm being dramatic. She started telling people at church that I turned my own brother into the police over a family disagreement, making me the villain in her version of events. The last time she called, she had the audacity to suggest I write a letter to the judge asking for leniency because families should stick together. When I told her Brandon would need to apologize to Billy first, she scoffed. Billy's not even family, Jensen. He's just an employee who got lucky. You're really going to choose some outsider over your own blood? I hung up. Haven't answered her calls since. Billy and I run a multi-million-dollar company now. Every time we sign a new contract, every time we hire another employee, every time we see Dad's name on our business cards, we remember what he taught us about doing things the right way. Sometimes the good guys actually do win.